Now the way that you turn your bulbs on and off is entirely your choice. The animation is your own design. So I'll walk you through how I animated my sign, but you should feel free to be as creative as you want with your own. Now I know I want the timing between the light bulbs turning on and off to be even. So just to make things simple, I'm going to space out every change in light by 10 frames. And if that animation ends up being too slow, I can adjust everything later, but this is an easy way to get the timing evenly spaced. So I'll hold Shift and press page down to jump forward 10 frames. Then I want to turn on the blue inline of the text. So I'll open up the opacity by pressing T on the keyboard and change the value from 0 to 100. Then I'll jump 10 frames forward again and turn on the yellow outline for that text, change it to 100%, and then preview that animation so far. So you can see very easily with these hold keyframes, we can simulate a neon sign turning on and off. It's really that simple. Alright, now I want to jump down to the word burgers and do something a little bit differently with that one. Instead of having it just turn straight on, I want to do two things. First, I want to split up the word into two halves, and then I want to make it look like the sign is having a little bit of trouble turning on. So each half kind of flickers on separately. So to start, I'll go to the first keyframe so I can actually see the text. Then I'll rename this Burgers 1, and then duplicate it. Then I'll solo the first layer, switch to my pen tool by pressing G on the keyboard, click on one of the points of the second half of the word, then draw a box around it, press delete, delete one more time, and that gets rid of everything on the second half. Then I'll unsolo that layer and solo the second layer, and then select the first half of the word, delete, delete one more time, and I'm left with just the second half. So together, it makes up the entire word. But now I have control over the two halves. I'll unsolo those, and I want the first half of the word to come on at the same time as the blue inline of the word Bob's. So I'll grab that layer at that point in time and change the opacity to 100%. Then I'll go 10 frames forward, and that's where I want the second half of the sign to turn on. So I'll go to the opacity and change that to 100%. If I preview this animation, we now have the timing right. But I want each half of this sign to flicker on. And I'm actually going to do this by hand. It's pretty simple to do. I'll go to the first layer, have it start at 100% opacity, then on the very next frame, drop it down to something very dim, like 15%, so you can hardly see it. Then I'll go forward one more frame, turn the opacity up, but not all the way to 100, something around there. Then I'll go one frame forward again, drop it down, but not quite as much as the first time. Then go forward and set it to 100%. Now if we preview this, you see that it kind of flickers on. I'll do the same thing with the second layer. Start at 100%, then go forward one frame, drop it down to something really dim, go forward one frame, increase it, forward again, dimmer, then forward one more frame, 100%. Now that sign flickers on instead of just turning on perfectly. And if I wanted to make this a little bit more random, I could spread these keyframes out a bit, add some more flicker, adjust the values. Being completely random usually produces perfectly good results. And if we come back out into our main comp and preview the same time, you can see that we have a pretty convincing flicker on. Now I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me animate the rest of my sign. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. I used hold keyframes like this for my entire animation, and if you want to see the animation as a whole, just go to my sample project where you can see the final piece. And that's all there is to this method for animating a neon sign traditionally. So if this is the route you're going to go with, go ahead and animate your design and post it to your project page. Now if you're interested in animating things a little bit more creatively, check out the next video where I'll get into some non-traditional neon animation techniques.